Perfect. So again, really focus on what a day in the life looks like for staff as they're using Litify and Case Status together. I think the biggest piece of the integration is literally never having to leave Litify to take advantage of the added horsepower that comes from Case Status. I'm in a matter in Litify at the moment, and we can see that we have this Case Status messaging iframe built directly within the matter so that as staff members are living in the case, they could see everything that comes from Case Status to view the messages, documents, checklist items, and general activity within that actual matter without having to leave. Streamlines the day-to-day, makes it easy for staff to never have to leave the matter, but to take advantage of a centralized location. We want to make sure all of the staff get notified as well. And so that's a big part of this idea of creating more efficiency internally. And then on the other tab I have here, it's just what we typically build as best practice for our Litify firms is essentially this Case Status tab, a Case Status button, which, as you can see here, just gives you the fullness of the platform for any sort of extra features like creating automations, customizing journeys, and taking advantage of that added horsepower. So again, never having to leave Litify, making it extremely easy for staff, and then making sure that we train our Litify firms based on what their day-to-day typically looks like. So we'll, again, talk about that as we go through the demonstration. Over on the left side of the screen is the actual mobile application, what the platform is going to look like specifically for the client. Now, this is my actual phone. It's kind of a live setting here. Client downloads the app tomorrow. This is exactly what it looks like for them. It's a firm-branded mobile application. It's going to have the law firm's logo, the color scheme on the application, so that it comes across as an extension of the practice, right? Paul talks about getting apps that get stuff done. This becomes an extension of your practice, a differentiator between other firms in the area, an experience that your clients are very much used to getting literally in every other industry except legal, right? I don't know about you guys, but I look at my banking app. I look at the Wells Fargo app every 5 minutes. The money hasn't moved, but I just like looking to make sure things are okay, right? And we provide that self-service for the client, especially during such a trying time like their legal case. When through the application, Paul had touched on it, we're seeing a 70 to 85% adoption rate. So very high when it comes to adoption. And I think the biggest reason for that is just how easy it is for the client to log in. Client gets a very simple text message. Hey, this is the law firm, download our firm branded app. In that message will be a link to the App Store where the client downloads the app. And then all they're doing is entering in their cell phone number, a verification code, and that is it. Very simple, very straightforward for the client, where they're not having to remember any passwords, any extra credentials. They don't have to log into a computer, look at their email. May give myself up here, but if I share my home screen, you guys can see the 974 on the Gmail, the 385 on the Outlook. It's completely in the abyss. I've given up on it completely. But the idea is clients aren't living in their email, right? We're focusing on that mobile piece and meeting clients where they expect to be met. And so the good news is the other 20, 30% of folks that are not downloading Case Status are still going to receive every single message, update, document via text. They can text you right back and forth like a regular texting thread. All that's coming back here within the actual matter to take advantage of that visibility so that everyone knows what's being shared back and forth. Now, when I log into the application, I can see as the client really the answer to my number one question, right? What's going on? What's my status? What's happening? I'm on a PI pre-lit case. I have some checklist items on here. My current status is treatment. If I hit this more button, I can see, hey, we appreciate you working with us to handle your case. Here's a link to our welcome video. It's giving me, the client, this access that I've never really had before, because before I was just calling in. And it also provides this visual aid of where I stand on my client journey. I'm on stage 1 out of the 6. I have this visual representation of that journey, but I'm also going to have access to this process tab that's going to walk me through that journey from start to finish. I'm on treatment, but if I wanted to look ahead, I can see 2 is maximum medical improvement, 3 is attorney review, 4 is negotiations, 5 is settled, 6 is escrow, and then case closed. This becomes the self-service for clients. We're building this muscle memory where they're logging in as opposed to calling in, which is why we're seeing around a 51% decrease of inbound traffic, right? Imagine half of that activity gone via phone calls and emails because they're now self-serving. We want to automate these actual updates that are happening in Case Status based off of any events that are going on in Litify. We use the matter plans that are on Litify, but just know that we have the Apex action to essentially update it based off of any event in Litify, so that as we make a change in Litify, it automatically updates the client in the case status platform. And that's the big key, is making it extremely easy for staff to go about their day-to-day essentially the same, but now taking advantage of that centralized experience for the client on the application. Clients have messaging where they can have one place to communicate back and forth. We're eliminating this traditional mix of phone calls, emails, texting. Some firms like giving out their personal cell, and have one secure line of communication, both for the client and for the staff. Clients are sending a message out. They can type their message out. They can text it back. They can add any sort of images, videos, media files, PDFs, documents, or anything, where once they send that message that's coming directly in the actual matter iframe it that you can see here on the screen. Staff members just go to the messages. We can see all of the messages that have been shared back and forth. And then we can see all the documents that are syncing back and forth as well. All of these are going to be syncing back into a case status messaging property in Litify, or Docrio for the documents, where they're going to be syncing there automatically as well. But we've had firms create flows to have these messages copied somewhere else, right? This is where we take advantage of companies like Micronet to help assist with some of these flows that we don't have already as best practice. When a client downloads the application, we can start tracking activity at a pretty granular level to have that audit trail, to see every time that the client views the Your Team tab, reviewed their case status, logged into the app, opened up the app, logged in, read a message, right? So that we can now see how engaged our clients are throughout the entirety of the case. The audit trail makes it totally worth it for a lot of these firms if you're dealing with a client that may be engaging a little more than regularly. Staff members could easily just hit this send a message button where they can respond back to the client. You can see that we can format our messages. We have message templates where we could house a library of go-to messages for the firm, all within the matter. We could even translate our messages to over 138 languages, both inbound and outbound, right? Meeting clients where they expect to be met, especially if English isn't their native language, so that everyone in the firm can not only translate that message, but also respond to that message in that actual language as well. You can see the recommended response toggle that we have here, a new feature that we just rolled out with our Casey AI, but empowering staff members to become the editor and not the author when it comes to communicating back with the client. So every time a message comes in from the client, it's going to give the law firm these 3 recommended responses to take advantage of using AI on how they'd like to respond back to the client. I can provide a resource, set expectations, answer questions. I can select which topic I'd like to use. I can change the sentiment. I can regenerate, expand, shorten. I can upvote, downvote, like anything AI that gets better the more that you use it. But what's more important is that this develops a tone and a voice, not only for the firm, but for the user specifically. This isn't getting shared with any other law firm data. This isn't connected to ChatGPT or the internet. This is your siloed firm AI tool to help leverage the AI when it comes to messaging back to clients, enabling your staff, especially new staff members that come in, but providing that recommended response as well. And we've seen a number of firms already take advantage of some of these messages and responses where they're responding back to over 100 messages in a matter of hours. So creating this efficiency is key, all while staying within the actual matter. The last piece that I wanted to touch on really quickly was going to be the automations that we can set in place that are very native to case status right off the bat and essentially available for you day one of going live with Case Status and Litify. When I create the journeys in Case Status, you're essentially setting up the stages of what you want the client to see. We're creating the automated messages that live in that stage of the case for the no case change, so any sort of updates that come in. We can send a message weekly, monthly, twice monthly, letting them know that there are no new updates to report. We have automations for treatment reminders for the injury-specific cases, recurring messages, date-based messages, single message automations as well. So when I move to specific stages of the case, we can send a message automatically giving the client an overview of what's going on. So we can now become a little more proactive with our communication and provide that personal touch that is constantly getting changed based off of where a client is at in the journey, so that from an attrition standpoint, a client is no longer wondering, hey, what's going on, right? There are times where a client may leave and the firm just doesn't know. And this becomes a great tool to help prevent that from happening. A lot of these automations are working for you in the background, but we have a number of Litify firms that are taking advantage of just the robustness of Litify and Salesforce in general to create flows to send messages via case status based off of any event that's happening in Litify. And George and the Micronet team have already helped us out with a number of those examples. But this all comes included in a package of case status that's very easy to set up and very straightforward. As we're now measuring this client experience, as client now has this centralized experience, we want to be able to measure what that experience looks like at every stage change. So every time a case goes from stage to stage in the case status platform, your client is going to have the opportunity to rate their experience from a 0 to 10 net promoter score. So you can see that it pops up here, how likely you to refer the firm to a friend or a colleague. Very easy for the client to enter in a score. They also have the option to leave any sort of feedback, and they're back on their case. Very simple, very straightforward, extremely painless. But now the law firm has this hard, concrete data to look for more opportunities for reviews, referrals, just general insight, right? We can now use our automations that are native to case status based off of those net promoter scores that most of our firms are taking advantage of day one. Every client that leaves me a 9 or 10 in the first 3 stages of the case gets a message saying, hey, thanks. Here's a link to my Google Business, my Avo, my Super Lawyer link. On the flip side, we can say, well, every client that gives me a 6 or below in every stage of the case automatically gets a message saying, hey, we take this very serious. How can we help? Here's a phone number to call. We want to celebrate the low scores just as much as we do the higher scores, because now this becomes a micro-targeting tool for the law firm, right? Think of this as the check engine light. If we can catch this early on, we can convert it into a positive score, but then we can also strike while the iron's hot instead of waiting until the end of the case to take advantage of that opportunity ask. Clients are also going to have access to this Your Team tab that's going to give the client a nice visual of who's working on the case. I'm glad somebody voted my cousin Vinny, because there's the picture there for the attorney. That's Vincent Gambini there. But for today, he's just called Litify attorney. But the idea is that clients now have a nice overview of who's working on their case. Phone call that happens every now and again is, I don't know who my team is. We want to automatically update the client every time there are any sort of staff changes. And you can see the kind of personable approach. There's a picture, the phone, the email, the bio, where if a client wants to call that number, they could easily call the number, as you can see here. But they're also going to have access to this refer button so that a client could easily hit this refer button. It's going to pull all this info into a contact card so I can send it as a text, an email, a note to really whoever I want to. And so leveraging that, having it all in the application to provide that stickiness, to look for more opportunities for reviews, referrals, and just having that general insight. So hopefully it comes across as very simple, very straightforward from a staff member point of view. Wanted this to just be a highlight of what the integration looks like. Really taking advantage of the integration for staff is staying in one location within the matter, taking advantage of the fullness of case status. And then from the client point of view, having one centralized experience where it becomes self-service for them 24/7. I'll go ahead and stop sharing here and pass it back off to Paul.